SBC Media.
Welcome to the iGaming Daily podcast, analysing the news from the betting and gaming industry all over the globe, supported by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming market.
Last September, Scott Sibella announced an abrupt departure from Resorts World, stepping down as its president and CEO for what was stated at the time as violating company policy. However, since then, details of what these violations were have been in short supply. This was until Thursday last week when the Department of Justice reported that Sibella pleaded guilty to failing to file reports of suspicious transactions while working in his role as CEO of MGM Grand and MGM Resorts. And this will be the main focus of the first half of today's episode of iGaming Daily, sponsored by Optimove, where I'm joined by Joe Streeter, the editor of Casino Beats, and Jessica Welman, editor of SBC Americas. Then in the second half of the podcast, while we've got Joe and Jess, I like Sean Connery then, Jess, we'll look into Flutter's New York Stock Exchange listing this week and a brief glimpse into the Super Bowl that's taking place in Las Vegas. First off, Jess and Joe, how are you doing today?
I would try to do with Sean Connery right now, but it's all I have are inappropriate lines from the Jeopardy skits in SNL, so I don't know if it's safe for work.
Whenever I want to get into my Sean Connery impression, I just go like, yes, 1,000 times. Joe, you okay?
I'm all good, thank you. Well, I'm getting Bane here. I'm getting a very Bane impression.
Bane? Oh, Batman's Bane.
Batman's Bane, yeah. It's like ready to take over Gotham.
I was born in the dark.
There you go.
I don't really know how we're going to top that on this podcast. Really.
That's it, call it. Wrap it up. It's not getting better than that.
Oh, yes. Okay. We're not going to do is just do impressions all through the show. We are going to talk about what I mentioned in the intro, but before we do, now's probably the best time to mention the supporter of the iGaming Daily podcast, and that is Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming market. 56% of the EGR Power 50 personalized player experiences with Optimove. And for anyone visiting ICE next week, make sure you visit the Optimove stand, mention that you've listened to an episode of iGaming Daily, and show that you've subscribed, and get an Amazon gift card. And as well, Optimove have another special offer, and they're offering new clients a free first month when they buy Optimove. For more information and claim the free month, go to optimove.com/SBC. Links will also be left in the podcast description below. I really struggle.
Are you turning all of your S's into shushes on purpose at this point?
Subconsciously, I was trying not to do
At first, I was like, "Oh, he's kind of doing." No, okay, I think it might be a bit.
It's like a tick now that I've just got from the start of the show. I'm trying
we'll
to
see you at ICE.
Right, I'll try not to do it. I'm gonna do it. Jeez, okay. Firstly, it's an interesting case. Joe, you're the one who you brought this up as a topic of discussion for today's podcast. And Jess, this is obviously based in the US. Can you both just give us kind of an oversight of the allegations that have happened?
Yeah, so I'll sort of kick us off there. We're very lucky to have Jess. There's an interesting story, and we're very lucky to have Jess's expertise on the United States and everything that's going on in the political landscape there and the regulatory landscape as well. And also because it's a Vegas story. And you a former native of Vegas, Jess, or are you still?
I'm not a native. Well, there's very few actual Vegas natives, but I think 13 years there, I'm allowed to call myself a former local.
Yeah. Yeah, from where we're sitting, you're definitely an expert. So lucky to have you here and have your opinion on this. I'm excited to hear what you think. And like you mentioned, James, the alarm bells were ringing following the abrupt resignation last year. That was very much out of the blue. It caught many off guard. And I think as many sort of suspected, there was something a bit deeper here. And fast forward a few months, heading into a new year, we did finally get some clarity. The Department of Justice reported that Sibella, we're going Sibella, pleaded guilty to failing to file reports of suspicious transactions while in his role as CEO of MGM Grand for MGM Resorts. According to the plea agreement, Sibella knowingly let Wayne Nix, who was a customer there, a high-value customer by all accounts, they let him continue to gamble large amounts of money at various MGM properties. That's despite having knowledge that he was working as an illegal bookie. It came during the 2019 Super Bowl. That it was reported, it's alleged, I guess we should say, that he had accepted a $5 million wager on the Super Bowl. And Sibella knew about this and did not report it to the authorities or the casino. And he's pled guilty, but those are the allegations. It's quite serious. And that's what's led to his resigning last year. And now this criminal case is starting to unfold.
Yeah, and Joe has mentioned some of what this was too, was kind of putting a bow on several different federal cases that people have been tracking. The Wayne Nix was part of his own investigation. And I'm not positive, but best I can tell, this kind of came about because the feds had their eyes on Wayne Nix. Wayne Nix was a former minor league baseball player who became a very kind of high-powered illegal bookie in the United States, allegedly. Just a big allegedly on all of this. This is per the accusations. Per the accusations, he had a long client list of athletes in particular who were betting on sports. So you guys probably don't know the name Yasiel Puig, but he was a very popular MLB player back in the day, very successful. But he pled guilty to lying to police officers related to this investigation, the Knicks one. So that happened, in, I believe, early last year, something like that. So, Sibella was kind of part of this whole Wayne Nix story. And as part of this whole thing, he was also hosting these weekends where high rollers would come and hang out with him and go golfing and get comp rooms and that sort of stuff. Fun fact about this, apparently there's a show here called Undercover Boss.
Oh, big fan. Huge fan. Yeah,
you guys have this too.
Yeah.
I think I mainly watch the US ones.
The US one is 100 times better, but yeah.
We've just got them in Poundland or something like
that.
So Scott Sibella was on Undercover Boss at one point in time. And so they were called like Undercover Boss Weekend, VIP weekends. Like they marketed the whole thing that he used to be on Undercover Boss. So that's a fun quirk about this. And then, he basically said, I kind of knew that this wasn't, I wasn't sure where this money was coming from, but he didn't do kind of his duty as the head of the property to ask, hey, where is this money coming from? Because as we all know, casinos are huge sites for money laundering, and you can't take money that comes from an illegal source.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
I'm going to try and find that Undercover Boss episode and watch it. Listeners, I will not leave a link in the description to it. You can find it yourself if you like. But Sibella, what charges does he now face? Or what punishment does he now face to these charges? And Jess, maybe just a lot for you and kind of utilising your history. Is this setting a precedence, or is there a similar case that this is following?
I'm sure there are some old Vegas cases that kind of mirror this. I can't name one off the top of my head, to be perfectly honest. But, I mean, it certainly seems like it was a plea deal where he has agreed to plead guilty to the single count rather than, go through the process of a trial on a more elaborate set of charges. You have to wonder if his testimony is being used in Wayne Nix's case as well. With the guilty plea, he owes a $250,000 fine and up to 5 years in prison. On top of this, though, because the casino itself is culpable for the behavior of its employees, the Cosmo and MGM resorts are paying several $1 million in fines as well, 7.45 million in fines to the government for the fact that they didn't have proper oversight in place.
Yeah, that's significant. And as you mentioned, it sort of feels like the tip of the iceberg, this one. It feels like, other things will follow. And I could be completely off here, but this one may set a little bit of a precedent just because where we are in terms of the US gambling market now, it's obviously maturing at a rapid rate. So the climate is very very different to what it was even, say, 5-6 years ago. And it might be seen as more important that these things, these type of incidents are dealt with by a heavier hammer than they were sort of 6-7 years ago.
Yeah, maybe. I think too, you have to remember, time to plug our other podcast, Cinema Reels. You can go listen to the episode James and I did on casino. Las Vegas used to be a very different place with a lot different kind of mob ties and that sort of thing, where this stuff was very commonplace. And I think we are kind of reaching that growth point for Las Vegas where the last of the generation that this was just like how business was done is aging out and retiring. And it's just becoming more corporate and more buttoned up. That, it'll be interesting to see, especially, we'll talk about in the second segment with the Super Bowl coming in, what you're doing for high rollers and that sort of thing at properties, given what's happened.
I'm glad you mentioned Casino and Cinema Reel, because in my head I was thinking, are we going to get a Scorsese film on this in the future? That we can review on Cinema Reels further down the line.
It feels like a movie, right? It does feel like there's so many different elements, and Jeff sort of tells us more, unravels even more further than we went. It feels like a movie, or in today's world, it feels like a 12-part Netflix series rather than a movie. But yeah,
I feel like it's more likely we'll get a 3-part Netflix quickie documentary than the Scorsese treatment, but we can keep our hopes high.
We'll review it nonetheless. Just to round off the first half, does this now bring into focus the relationship between a casino operator or casino operators and the players themselves? Joe, I'll jump on you first, and Jess, you can round it off.
Well, I sort of bring a little bit of a UK perspective here, and obviously we're dealing with a more mature market. VIP schemes here were a massive talking point. I think maybe pre-COVID, but they were a massive talking point. They were a real hot potato, a really tough subject, and they came under massive scrutiny. I think situations like this don't help. I think it's not good. Nix was given that type of treatment, and subsequently he passed that on, or allegedly anyway, he passed that on. And I don't think it helps these situations. I think there is a duty of care there when we are talking about how, or let's say the relationship between casino operators and high roller players. It's an interesting one. I think the US and specifically Vegas will take its own approach, but it needs to be meticulous and it needs to be careful.
I'm curious to see, like Joe said, we in the US have not had kind of our high roller comeuppance the way other markets have. Over at Canadian Gaming Business, we've covered a couple of recent stories where the AGCO for these online operators is coming down kind of hard on them when it comes to treating high rollers and potentially enabling irresponsible gambling behavior in order to entice a high roller. There's another lawsuit pending with MGM Resorts in New Jersey, where a man is claiming that the VIP program was designed to keep him addicted to gambling. And they just, they kind of have the benefit of the fact that this guy is also currently on trial for fraud and has a history of crimes and a criminal record and stuff, so it hasn't gotten the same amount of play. You kind of have to wonder, with sports betting being in the spotlight, we're going to see both 60 Minutes and ESPN tackle sports betting in the U.S. on segments this week, if there will be some explosion of a story regarding high rollers coming up soon.
Perfect. We're just going to go to a quick ad break. But when we get back, we are, like we mentioned, we're going to talk a bit about Flutter's listing on the New York Stock Exchange this week, and also about the Super Bowl, which is in Las Vegas, Nevada as well. We've just been talking about the first half. But yeah, tune in after the break.
Brazil, a global economic powerhouse, deeply passionate about sports, and now home to one of the hottest markets in gaming. And we're giving it the full SBC treatment. Join industry leaders, market experts, and all the major players in the country for 3 days of content, exhibition, and epic networking at the first ever SBC Summit Rio.
Welcome back. We are remaining in the US, but I want to get a UK perspective on this from Joe as well. So we saw Flutter list on the New York Stock Exchange this week. Jess, for you, just how significant of a moment is this? And then for Joe, how much of an impact is this to kind of the city of London for them to move to the New York Stock Exchange? Is there a loss of trust there? And Jess, we'll jump with you first.
I think the biggest thing is just the listing on the New York Stock Exchange, as Peter Jackson, the CEO of Flutter, kind of said. It feels like the right time because FanDuel is kind of Flutter at this point in time. There are other verticals, certainly, but I think this is the acknowledgement from Flutter that this particular brand is the beating heart of your portfolio and the future of the brands that you have. And it makes a lot of sense to go public. That, for that reason, I think it's important. I will be perfectly honest. Ted Menweir is more the guy on this one, that financials are not my strength, but I do agree it is a big deal. I don't know in terms of the financial impact, it's certainly potentially going to be an influx of cash into the company, I suppose. But that piece, well, Joe, I'll tag you on that part because I've got nothing.
It's really interesting. I think it's a real statement of intent from Flutter as they, move into the US, which, will likely become the main source of their profit through FanDuel. A real statement of intent, a real, it really enables them to go and source capital and, source acquisitions in North America. From a London perspective, it's very interesting. It's not good for London, of course. It's not a great moment for London, for the UK capital. It follows a trend of businesses sort of shifting away from London. And it comes amid, I think, we know we're likely to see more stringent regulations on this front for the gambling industry in the UK. It comes amid those looming. It's not a surprise, but it feels like a landmark moment for sure.
Yeah, we mentioned precedents in the first half of the show when relating to the Sibella story. This one, I fear, could set a precedence of more gambling firms moving away from definitely the UK market, and just the impact it has, certainly with the how bad the UK economy is right now, and just how much money gambling firms contribute to the UK economy. This could be a big moment, and I feel like it's not the last we've kind of heard from this from a UK perspective. But just on Flutter themselves and kind of their standing in the US now, and their right word to use here, their prospects moving forward, just how big of a player could they be in the US market in comparison to their competitors who are established themselves?
Well, they're the number one in the market right now with FanDuel. I guess I was like, I don't really know how much better you want them to do, James.
No, that's a brain fog from me.
It's a good question though, in terms of, right now it's a duopoly. It's DraftKings and FanDuel, and they'll sit there and nitpick each other and say like, well, we're number one in market share when it comes to gross gaming revenue, but we're number one when it comes to handle. And it is kind of neck and neck. What we've seen though is that FanDuel's path to profitability was a lot shorter than DraftKings. They have been out front of the innovations with same game parlays and that sort of thing. And I think really the question is, now that we're reaching this inflection point in the industry where the fast, obvious growth of new states rolling out is winding down, what are they going to do to keep bringing something to the table to bring that next round of customers that isn't so obvious into the fold?
Perfect. After this podcast, I'm going to take a nap so I can recharge and not ask stupid questions.
It's two sides of the same coin, right? We're doing this first thing in the morning for me, and so I'm bleary-eyed, and the end of the day for you guys, so you're worn out. That congratulations, iGaming Daily audience, you're getting all of our A games right now.
Right, we'll move over to rounding off to some brighter and easier news, which isn't too powerful or too demanding on my brain. Vegas, they're set to host the Super Bowl. You know, it's taking shape. It's what date is it, Jess? Again, it's the
February 11th, I believe.
February 11th. Yeah, I think you're right on that one. Being held in Sin City, Kansas City Chiefs v the San Francisco 49ers, I believe.
That's right.
Going to be excited for it. It's a massive event for Sin City.
It's the first time Vegas has ever hosted a Super Bowl. So yeah.
From kind of like a sponsorship or operator's perspective, just how are they utilizing the allure now of it being in Las Vegas?
Well, so Charlie and I talked about this a bit on a different iGaming Daily episode that you guys can go check out. It's two kind of situations. For DraftKings and FanDuel, it's actually pretty difficult. In the state of Nevada, you can't play on either of those sites. Whereas for Caesars and BetMGM, on the ground, it's a great situation because you have brick and mortar casinos that you can advertise your product. You can actually use the product there and they can get people involved. We will see 3 Super Bowl commercials, though, DraftKings, FanDuel, and BetMGM. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I think there will be a certain amount of interest in, you know, it's the biggest football game of the year. So operators will inevitably do promotions. You know, FanDuel's doing Kick of Destiny. DraftKings is going to probably roll out some sort of big operation too. But it's actually not the acquisition event that people kind of think that it is. The start of football season tends to be more where you're getting quality customers. So now that we're, again, getting into the 5th year of this, the 6th year of this, it'll still be big. I don't think it'll be, you know, at a national level, the same excitement as we've maybe seen in past years.
Jess, that's somebody that is struggle with the NFL a little bit. You know, I'm going to plug in for the Super Bowl. I'm going to ask you that quite annoying question that probably husbands across America are getting asked as they prepare to tune in. Who's doing the halftime show this year?
It's Usher, isn't it? I don't know off the
Is it
top
Usher?
of my head. You know what? Let me find out.
I don't know if that silence is just how bad that
Usher's not the one, right?
Is.
I hope we never have him as a future podcast guest, but Usher's not.
We'll probably get Drake, if anything.
Yeah, it's headlined by Usher. Usher, Tiesto.
Okay.
Reba McEntire, Post Malone, Andra Day. That's pretty random. So it's a lot of different people, it looks like. I'll be honest, I'm going to be on a cruise during the Super Bowl, so I haven't been as dialed into it as I normally am.
You mentioned the halftime spots as well. I remember when they were massive. That spot is gold. Everybody puts all their creative into their halftime ads. Has that esteem and importance lowered a little bit in recent years, or is it still, now people can go on their phone during the halftime show, right? And
yeah,
it's not quite as valuable as it once was.
I think just the nature of ads in 2024. It used to be you would sit down for the game and you haven't seen the commercial before, and you see it for the first time and it's a big deal. Right now, I've seen, except for the FanDuel ad, which is going to be done live because it's Gronkowski doing his field goal kick, we've already seen what the other two commercials look like from FanDuel or from BetMGM and DraftKings. So there's still build up around it, and there's still a lot of ad creative that goes into it.
Yeah.
But I think all of us are just at the point in our lives where sitting through commercial breaks is just something you don't want to do anymore. So it doesn't quite have the same impact as it did in, the 90s.
They're doing it live, did you say?
Yeah. Because Rob Gronkowski is going to try to kick an extra point again, and FanDuel bettors can bet to either make or miss, and whichever side it is gets their share of a $10 million prize pool.
Oh, I like it. That's why they're the market leader.
Little upstart FanDuel, right, James?
I thought we moved on from that. I'm just looking forward to the morning after, and there's a load of new film trailers that have been released. That's all I care about.
We'll watch him on TikTok like true millennials.
Yeah. Just to round off the podcast, I do want to ask, I hope this isn't another stupid question. We've got the Super Bowl now in Las Vegas. They just had the F1. Will we see any parallels of kind of the impact of like the brick and mortar attendance at casinos or anything? Because they're two similar big sporting events.
Yeah, for sure we will. I think the town, based on talking to people, is more excited about the Super Bowl than they were about F1 because there's a less disruption than there was to set up a racetrack in the middle of the city. What we kind of saw from F1 too was that the higher end casinos benefited a lot, and the more middling casinos didn't really get that kind of benefit. I think what we're going to see with the Super Bowl is that across all kind of tiers of casinos on the Strip and even downtown, there's going to be a substantial amount of traffic and activity. And it's probably going to be less of that like high roller set that we were kind of associating with F1.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Would you have seen that kind of higher end casinos getting, bigger attendances and bigger impacts from the F1? Is that mainly due to a more, I'd say, European centric audience that came there than the US?
Just a more international set.
Yeah,
it's interesting. And to break the fourth wall real quickly, I've got to let our audience know that James, our host, is a massive Swiftie. So the Taylor effect will be there. The Taylor Swift effect will take hold, and he'll just be tuning in for the Taylor Swift reactions that we've become.
Well, if she makes it, right? Isn't she? She would have to she's got to run from Japan. I think. I
think she's got a show the night before. Or something.
We'll see. One thing that you guys can do that we can't, none of those Taylor Swift markets are legal in the United States. So we won't be betting on them at sports books and stuff. If you get offered them, you're getting offered by an illegal offshore sports book, and you shouldn't bet there. But it'll still be fun and interesting. I'm sure people will have little side bets with their friends. And that's, we'll see the giant numbers coming out of the AGA soon about how much is going to be wagered on the Super Bowl. And that does include those kinds of bets with friends, Super Bowl squares games at your Super Bowl party. So maybe it'll have an impact on that, but it won't show up on any revenue reports.
Well, to sign off and quote a Taylor Swift song, is it over now? Yes, the podcast is now over. We're going to end this.
See you next time.
We'll see you next time.
That's the best I can do.
We'll see you next time on the latest episode of iGaming Daily. Goodbye.
Thank you for listening to today's iGaming Daily podcast, supported by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming market. If you want to find out more about some of the subjects raised today, feel free to explore any of the sites in the SBC News Network or check out the latest edition of the SBC Leaders magazine. Happy reading.